Everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Art of Photography. My name is Ted Forbes. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about art galleries. This is an odd topic, and I hope that maybe that's a little bit foreign to you, and I hope that I can enlighten you with a few things here. The idea for this topic came from recently. I took a trip to New York. And there was no reason for my trip. I just wanted to get out of here a little bit. I had some vacation time and some airline miles from some other traveling I had done. And I thought, you know, I haven't been to Manhattan in a long time, and it's time to go revisit, probably about 8 years. And I used to go to New York fairly frequently. And it's a great city. That's an understatement. It's a magnificent place. And one of the things I've always loved about it is that I get my batteries recharged a little bit. I get inspired. I see stuff that you know, I come back ready to work and ready to get going on stuff. And this last trip, there was a little bit of a deal with it because, you know, I had some stuff stacked up to make the trip possible. But also, I really didn't want to spend a whole bunch of money, which when you go to New York, it's real easy to start doing. Things are a little more expensive sometimes than they are in other cities. And typically, when I do a trip like that to a major city, I always go to art museums. That's one of the things I like to do. And art museums in New York can start costing money and time, and they're not really near one another. And so this last time, I decided that what I was going to do is I was actually going to just actually I spent 2 days, I was going to spend one, but I spent 2 days doing nothing but art galleries. And there's a couple reasons for this. One, art galleries are a little bit different than museums. One, they're all free. Two, they tend to deal with subject matter a little bit different than an institution like a museum would, in that they're going to have stuff that's more current, people who are living now, maybe people who aren't established in their careers. And so it's a little bit more of a mixed bag of what you're going to get to see. And if you get a chance to do something like this, I mean, there are art galleries outside of New York. You can do this in any city. Whatever city you live in, just go online and make a list and find out all the art galleries you possibly can find. Make them photography based, obviously. It's a photography podcast. We're all photographers. That's what we're interested in. And you'll be surprised at what you'll find. Now, typically, especially in a place like New York where it's great, where you can go to some place like Chelsea or Lower East Side or something like that, and they're all kind of grouped in there together. And so if you're lucky enough to be in a situation like that, what I would do is look them up online and find maybe 5 exhibitions that you definitely want to see, write them down, take them with you. And while you're traveling between those 5, bump into the gallery next door to that. They kind of tend to be clustered like that. And surprise yourself and find some stuff that I mean, I certainly found things that I didn't plan on seeing that were mind-blowing. There was a lot of stuff that was awful, you know, that comes with the territory. And then there was the things that I wanted to see, which also varied as well. I mean, some of them were great, some of them were not so great. I'll share some of those with you. The reason I'm telling you should do this, and how does this come into a photography tutorial, why am I talking about this? If you watch this podcast fairly regularly, or my videos on YouTube, you'll know that I tend to I don't like to talk about equipment in photography. There's plenty of other shows and podcasts that do that. That's fine. I like to get into the philosophy behind it, how we start to think as photographers, and how we try to get better as photographers. And the reason that I'm bringing this whole thing with photo galleries up is this. Typically, we all kind of live in this online world, and there's nothing wrong with this. But most of our world is reduced to a computer screen so much of the time. I love Flickr. I love 500px. I love all the photo sharing websites. I like to look at blogs that are friends of mine. I like to look up other photographers online and see their websites and their portfolios. I like to look up famous classic photographers and go through their work and find as much on that online as I can. But I actually had a conversation with a friend the other day, and we were talking about the difference between seeing your images on a computer screen versus in real life. If you watched this show before, you know that I do a lot of book reviews. And why do I collect books? Well, photos look different. Artwork in general looks different when it's being displayed or presented either in a book format or preferably in an actual gallery setting where the artist generally or some curator has gone through and actually picked out the show, put it in a certain order, and done their job. And good curators and good artists who do this with their own work present that in a different way. Not that you couldn't present your work well online, but for me, I mean, one thing is I really lose a sense of scale online because everything's on the same screen all the time. And so, for instance, there have been like some famous photos that when I've seen the prints in person, I've been surprised at how small they were. And in a really good way, because that really spoke to me in a certain way, rather than being extra large like I may have expected them to be, or something like that. So that's one reason. Two, I think just in general, the light source on a computer screen is behind the image. I mean, it's projecting it out. Whereas if you're in a gallery or looking at a book, the light is dependent on reflecting from a light source like the light in your ceiling or the sun or something like that. So it's just a different way of looking at work. You can really get in there, particularly with a gallery show that's really good, or a museum show, and see the detail in work and see what's really happening. And it's really important, I think, for everybody. And I think it has to do with getting better as an artist, to get out and really look at work this way. Photography is not just grabbing a camera and machine gunning it and going. And I think we all do that to a small degree. Some of us more than others, and sometimes I do it more than I should. Photography is not the act of just sitting around snapping photos all the time. Photography is about creating a product. And I know I've talked about that on the podcast before. And what is that end product? Well, your product is a picture, it's an image. You're creating that image. And there should be a finality to that. There should be kind of a direction and a way that you're looking at projecting that, and a vision that you have. And then I also think that, you know, it should be a physical product, and this should be something that's framed nicely and presented on a well-cut mat and hung on a wall, and grouped with other pictures that tell you a story, or give you some insight, or make you think. That is the power of photography. When you can all of a sudden engage that conversation with a viewer, that's the important thing. And it's really important to be able to do. And I think it's really important for you to go out and experience how other photographers are doing that. Museum shows are great, and I don't mean to knock them at all. I love museums, and I just didn't do it on this one particular trip. I just think that galleries are such a gold mine, in the sense that, one, they're free, and two, they're usually grouped, and there's a lot of them, particularly in a place like New York. There's a couple galleries in particular that I started with that I always try to hit when I'm in New York, because they're a little more on the hoity-toity end. They're midtown, but they carry really famous stuff that's usually very high priced. But it's such a rarity to get to see some of these things all put together in that way. There's the Benroubi Gallery, which is near Central Park, but on the east side, and then in the same building, floor up, is the Greenberg Gallery, and both of them are amazing. When I was there was a wonderful Heinrich Kuhn exhibition. He was a contemporary and a friend of Stieglitz, and what I'm going to share with you about this, and I don't have any books to support this, and I'll have to change that, but I don't think I could represent it anyway, even in a video. But anyway, I was going through and I was looking at these prints, and a lot of them are really old process. So some of them are photogravure, some of them are gummed by chromate, and then there was some that had this beautiful, there was a lot of loss in the details, and they were highly textured, and so they almost looked like impressionist paintings in a way, even though they were definitely still photographs. But one had this beautiful texture to the paper, and I asked the woman that was working there, I said, can you tell me a little bit about the printing process on some of these? And she said, well, she looked it up, and she said, this one's gummed by chromate on Japanese tissue paper. And I mean, sketchbook, write that down. I mean, they were just completely mesmerizing. You do not see work like this anymore. I think a lot of modern photographers like to get their work done at some place like Avedon or B&H, and it all has a sameness in the way it's printed. And my gosh, what a beautiful way of presenting work all of a sudden. And this photograph was almost 100 years old. It was a cool $39,000 to buy, but which was actually probably a pretty good deal considering the rarity of it. But anyway, it was beautiful, and I got this great idea from something that was actually pretty old. And like I said, these things are free to go into. Some other interesting stuff I saw, some wonderful Sarah Moon pictures. I haven't talked about Sarah much on this podcast, but go look her up, Google her. I'll put some links in the show notes. She's simply fantastic, and the work that she's done more recently, it's kind of this grungy 4x5, but you can see chemical splotches on it, and she just has a way of bringing that process in and making that part of the beauty in the mystery of the photo in some ways. I mean, you could call that kind of a trendy technique, but she just does it in such a wonderful way. I think on the other side, there were some shots or some galleries that I really didn't like as much. There was a Richard Avedon exhibition that was going on at the Gagosian Gallery, and I love Richard Avedon's work. He's one of my all-time favorites. I prefer his earlier work, and these were shots, and I think what bothered me is the way the show was kind of curated. It was just kind of this Andy Warhol, Gay Pride New York thing, and they're wonderful shots, but it was mixed in with, Vietnam napalm victims, which was just, maybe that was the intent that the curator had with this, is kind of trying to shock you with this weird balance of stuff that was going on, probably in a similar time frame. But anyway, all this stuff, it makes you think, and it makes you get out there, and it definitely, even the stuff I don't like, I bring that back, and it affects my work in a way where maybe I'm avoiding something, or maybe there was a small correction in what I didn't like about it, or maybe it just made me think. And then sometimes I found that, you know, you go years down the road and you revisit an idea or something and you thought, well, I didn't like that at the time, but my opinion is changing on that now. And that fluidity and that kind of awareness and that sense of what you want to do as a photographer, I think is really important to anybody, whether you're a professional, an amateur, a fine art photographer, or a full-on commercial photographer, or a wedding photographer, or a senior portrait photographer. I think those are the kinds of things that make us better artists, they make us more complete, and they make our work better. So anyway, all this to say is get out. Try to get off the computer a little bit when you are picking aside time to look at photos and photography, and try to get out and experience some of that live, whether that's a bookstore even, or whether you have an art gallery in your city that you'd like to go to, or you have a whole cluster of them like you do in a place like New York. So anyway, once again, visit us online. The website is theartofphotography.tv. We have more podcasts like this, and we actually have a lot of other content as well. We've started doing some written tutorials, some blog posting kinds of things, and there's also things like Masterclass Live and whole projects and all kinds of wonderful things that you can check out. So that is at theartofphotography.tv. And follow me on Twitter if you want updates on shows and other links that I might run across during the day to try to help you become a better photographer. My handle is @TedForbes. So if you go to twitter.com/TedForbes, sign up for an account if you're not on Twitter and follow me. Anyway, once again, this has been The Art of Photography, and thank you for watching.